Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Okay. Hi, everybody. Let me start here very quickly and sort of oddly. The sound quality of this might suck. My apologies on that. I'm convinced it's the air pressure. There have been some times, albeit not many, but there have been times when I have recorded and for some reason the volume level on everything is completely jacked up, and it really does have to do with air pressure. Believe it or not, this would also explain, I think, why my dog is in such a bad mood. She just doesn't look very happy. She sometimes shakes her head. It could be because her ears are popping or her head is full. I have no idea, but I can tell you right now that the sound waves on the audio here that I use for this particular show every single time are far lower than what they usually are. So this has to be an air pressure problem. I looked it up, and it did say that air pressure plays a role in microphone sound and 1,000 other things. But anyway, again, my apologies if this sounds poor in some way. I'll do my best on the back end of this to maybe clean it up a little bit. But anyway, I'm not sure what's going on beyond air pressure. So here we go. Let me mention this first. A couple of geopolitical things right off the top. The other day, Donald Trump again was in the Oval Office exposing a few people just with their basic mannerisms. He had Roger Goodell in there. He had the owner of the Washington Commanders NFL football team, Redskins, and the Mayor Muriel Bowser of Washington, D.C. And Muriel was not looking happy in the slightest. She did not want to be there. And again, a lot of the questions from the press were absolutely hilarious, and he was making jokes about all of it. And of course, Muriel Bowser hates him and is a criminal, and of the highest order, and I hope that she ends up behind bars at some point. But she wasn't laughing or smiling, and she was having none of it because, again, she's a godless monster. So either way, she was there and getting exposed, and I thought that was fantastic. Couple other things. RFK, of course, I'll play the audio toward the end of the show, but a executive order was signed by Donald Trump with RFK in the room along with the head of the CDC and I believe the FDA as well. And they were all there openly again saying that gain of function is now going to be eliminated and the funding for gain of function is going to be eliminated, which is a great thing also. I've also been aware of the fires that took place in Tel Aviv and throughout Israel. I find that interesting. Don't know who started them. Don't know why. Don't know what's going on. Don't really care. Just wanted to make mention of that. Found that to be odd. Of course, the Ukraine stuff consistently happening where they keep attacking Moscow or attempting to. And then, of course, the media hardly even brings it up and hardly even mentions it and says, well, he wants peace. And then all of a sudden he sends a drone in someplace to try to kill somebody. So Zelensky's a psycho. We all know that. And yeah, it's just, it's getting more and more odd by the minute. So with all of that said, I did want to mention this too. When Donald Trump has talked about Doge and Elon Musk is in the room like they were again at the last cabinet meeting, and Elon says, or Donald Trump, I should say, said, he's uncovered $150 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse. And then he leans forward, Elon does, and says, actually, it's up to 160 now. And then Donald Trump smiles and laughs and says, okay, 160. And he says, actually, it's far worse than that if you think about it, and it's far worse if you add in other elements. And then Elon nods his head, and a couple of other people nod their head. What Donald Trump means by that, of course, is the business of the executive order that he signed in his first go-around. That where individuals, specifically within the federal government or anybody for that matter, that if they break the law and they are found again to be guilty of either crimes against humanity or anything along those lines, that their assets can be seized, all of them. Every single bank account they have now belongs then to the government. Every single piece of property that they own now belongs to the government, and so on and so on. So we are talking about trillions in assets. We are talking about trillions in, again, not just waste, fraud, and abuse that's been found, but the actual belongings of the people who have actually engaged in this and having all of that confiscated. So I think that's exactly what Donald Trump means when he says that it's way more than 160 billion when you add in other elements and other things. So again, some people would call it coded language. It certainly is. He knows the bigger picture here. He knows what's going on. And I just wanted to make mention of that real quick. Again, he loves trolling people too, which is absolutely hilarious. The business of the Pope picture and the AI generated Pope picture and all that other stuff. You can see how he can control the media in the blink of an eye, and he can completely control, the questions that get asked to him. And then he's exposing, of course, their lack of sense of humor and how these people are just so uptight. Well, again, they're uptight because they have a lot to hide, and they're trying to make it sound like they're holier than thou. And of course, when anybody does that, they expose themselves for who they actually are. So there's a lot of that going on, again, on a constant basis, and it's almost too much for me to even keep track of, but it certainly is happening with regularity. So, with that aside for now, I do want to thank Jesse James and Outcast again for having me on the Dangerous Info podcast. It was a lot of fun. Serious conversation, good stuff. I'll link it in the description below if you're interested in watching it. In fact, there was a listener of the show and a former guest of the show who sent me a particular audio podcast. And again, I don't normally do this, but I do want to play this because this is about 17 minutes long, and it's from a podcast called Rise in Crime. Before I play this here, which again, it's about 17 minutes long, so you're going to want to get comfortable and listen to this because it is messed up. There was a school district, I'm basically just going to give you the nuts and bolts of it right up front, but there was a school district that ended up with a female superintendent, and her husband was a convicted sex offender and was a former educator himself. He ended up acquiring somehow a teaching license after all of that, probably with the help of his wife. And then he ended up getting busted again for being on probation, even though he wasn't a registered sex offender, but was supposed to be, and was apparently still working in this district. And then his wife, again as the superintendent, as of last Friday, May 2nd, was finally placed on administrative leave also after threats of a lawsuit. Because again, as they openly say in the actual audio and certainly in the podcast, how on earth can a woman be a superintendent of a school district and claim to protect all of these children when she doesn't even allegedly know what's going on with her own husband, when in fact she does? She's just making excuses for her own husband, and the two of them have kids, and a number of other things. So I'm going to play the audio of this. Again, it is remarkably fascinating. It is incredibly disgusting. But this right here should prove to people that this is how degenerate the school environment is. These people hire themselves. They hire one another. They make excuses for one another's behavior. And then when I'm done with that, I have a few more stories again that are basically of a very similar nature. So here again is the audio from the most recent episode, I believe, from Rise in Crime. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise in Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. I'm Mama Jules, and I feel like I have a running theme in the last 2 episodes, and that theme is community involvement. Members of the city or of the neighborhood who are saying enough is enough. Last episode, it was Angry Cops, Richard High's YouTube channel, that has led to the community standing up against the Buffalo School District. This episode, it's Hot Springs, Arkansas, and those parents, and then the Gilbert, Arizona parents that I'll bring you in an update to a story I brought you previously. So let's start with Hot Springs, Arkansas. This has an alleged repeat offender of child sexual material abuse and his school superintendent wife. So who are these two? Dr. Stephanie Nihas and Zachary Nihas are married educators who have 3 children. Now, I'm not going to give you the kids' names. First off, I want to protect them. And second off, you're going to hear them in a jailhouse phone call. So that'll happen here in a minute. Now, Stephanie's education career spans 26 years. She has a doctorate from University of Arkansas and has worked as a junior high math teacher, an assistant principal, then she was a principal, then in administration at the school district, and her ladder climbing has led her to her current position of superintendent of the Hot Springs School District. Now, Zachary is, I don't know, less driven, less successful. I don't know what your word I should be using for him, but his career did stall as an elementary school teacher at, and I want you to take note of this, St. John's Catholic School. He derailed his, ladder climbing back in 2014. That's when he was charged with 30 counts involving child sexual material. Zachary, eventually in 2016, pled guilty to 10 counts of distributing, possessing, or viewing matter depicting sexually explicit conduct involving a child. Now, a jury determined his sentence. It was a hefty 24 years, and off he went to prison. His lawyers petitioned the courts to shorten his sentence, basically saying his sentence didn't match other criminals' sentences. He got too much time comparatively, and his lawyer argued he deserved relief. The attorney general said, "Hey, buddy, you got relief when we lowered your charges from 30 counts to 10 counts." Now, I want to pause here. A jury was forced to view the explicit images and videos, and one jury member said the material was so disturbing and graphic that they had to seek mental health counseling following their jury service. Okay, that's disgusting. And my thoughts are with those who were just doing their civic duty and serving on that jury. Okay, so back to this petition. His relief wasn't granted. But somehow, in the prison system, maybe it was COVID, maybe it was overcrowding, maybe he fulfilled some sort of class schedule, whatever it was, Zachary was released early in 2022 after serving just 6 years of a 24-year prison sentence. Now, while researching this case, I found a Facebook post from March of 2023, so 2 years ago. In this post, the Arkansas Justice Project is calling out this atrocity, telling the story of Zachary's case and highlighting that he, at that time, had been rehired as a teacher. Yes, a sex offender on probation has been rehired as a teacher. 2 years ago, the community was already on edge about this. That post from the Arkansas Justice Project points out that Zachary had still not registered as a sex offender, even though his terms of parole required him to register. The post also points out that he accompanies his wife, who is the superintendent, to school activities. His whole life is centering around the youth of his community, and he has been found guilty and served time for disturbing child sexual material. And he's on probation until 2040. Now, another behavior that the community was struggling with was the fact that Zachary would allegedly enter and exit district school buildings without scanning his driver's license. The Post claims that all other employees have to scan their IDs, but that was suspended for Zachary. Now, this outrage back in 2023 led the school board to issue a statement in regards to Zachary being on school campuses. In that statement, they cited the district's policy 6.10, which reads, Megan's Law, or the law regarding sex offenders on campus, allows level 1 and 2 sex offenders to visit school campuses at activities where their child or children are present. Well, 2 years of concerns by the community has now been possibly validated because 6 days ago, Zachary was arrested on parole violations. His house was raided and devices were found that weren't allowed per his parole terms. Those devices were labeled as conduits for Zachary's, quote, evidence of crimes. Now, that whole phrase reads to me that the powers that be knew he was allegedly backviewing child sexual material or potentially involved again with child sex material chat rooms. Now, following his arrest, Stephanie Nehas sent an email to district staff. It read as follows. Good afternoon, HSSD colleagues. I would like to share some personal information with you. My husband was arrested on a parole violation this afternoon. I am not sure if or when it may hit the media. I do not know much at this time. I will share more with you when I know more. I simply ask for prayers for our family. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My number one concern at this time is our children. Now, that last sentence, it has an exclamation point behind it. My number one concern at this time is our children. Again, really? You have led a district that allows a sex offender to roam around freely, and your number one concern is, quote, our children. Kind of seems a little rich to me. Okay, I'm going to have you listen to a jailhouse phone call between Stephanie and her husband. This is right after the arrest. Pay attention to Zachary's story. I need you to listen about how he explains he got back into viewing or participating in child sexual material. And also pay attention to how his own children react in the phone call. It's kind of long, but it's worth the listen.
Stephanie Mayhew.
Hi.
Hey. I was on the phone with Vanessa.
Do you want me to hang up?
No.
Okay.
No. Where are you?
I'm at the detention center in the holding area. Just got brought in. I don't know what to say. I'm a weak failure.
You've got to stop lying to me. That's all I've got to say. Like, Zach, there's no reason this should have happened. No reason. You have support. You have love. You have someone here who asks lots of questions, and you lied and you lied and you lied, and that's not fair. And our kids, it's our kids that you're hurting the most.
I know. I've been thinking about y'all the whole time.
So
I'm, like I said, just a weak failure. I do have no excuse.
how long has it been happening? I mean, I don't want you to say a lot because obviously, but
yeah. Well, that phone there just last week, but I had gotten a cheap tablet at Walmart and was using that. But are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. But Stephanie, it was the same case, although it's much more frequent now, where I look at it and then I delete it and say never again. I just feel like an idiot. And it was, mostly the visits with Father George. And there was one about a month ago that he said, because I would do a confession, I would tell him everything in confession. And he said, you just got to eliminate access.
Yeah.
I took that tablet and I beat it up with a hammer and I threw it in the trash. And so I was good. I felt, all right, yes, I'm in control. I feel very good. But, just a while later, I don't know, several days later, a week later, I just started thinking about how I can get access. How can I do it? How can I do it? I never did it because of the covenant eyes or anything else.
Yeah.
That's why I got in that tablet. But
so it was just in the last week. So how many additional charges are they going to be able to put on you is my question. Real question.
There's a lot of files there. It is the same case where I just collect.
It's ridiculous.
I don't even go back and look at it. I don't even go back and look at it. I don't understand what that lady said. If I need some counseling, I need to.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are we doing right now? What do you need right now? Like Vanessa was just asking me, do you need a lawyer right now? Probably not.
I don't think so. No, I went ahead and I talked to him at the department, the sheriff's.
Okay.
I talked to that tonsist.
Okay. And you're on a no hold. You're on a no bond hold, so you'll be there. And he said that we wait for the parole board to decide whether they're going to defer or revoke your parole. So
it's just that misunderstanding on the internet access. I should have just not done it the whole time.
Yep. Yep.
And
can the kids hear your voice?
Can they?
Yes. Is it okay if I let them hear your voice?
Are they mad at me? But
they're sad. They're really sad.
I want to apologize.
Yeah, hold on a second. Julia, come here, baby. So, hold on just a second. I'm going to put you... Hey, Jay. Put your microphone silent. Okay, hold on. Putting you on speaker, Zach.
Okay. So, is it Julia and Jay?
Yeah. Andrew's at soccer. He doesn't know, and I'm not going to tell him until he gets home.
Yeah. Well, guys, I am very sorry. I've got a mental problem, a mental block, and I've got to find some help for that. I'm thinking about y'all the whole time. I'm thinking, who's going to clean Julia's glasses?
That's what she said. I told her I would.
And
Tell your daddy you love him.
I love you, Dad.
I love you all very much. I was thinking,
I love you so much.
who's going to fix him breakfast?
We're going to figure it out. We're going to all help each other. And we're going to pray for you. And we're going to pray that you will do what you can to come back home. So.
Yep, I love y'all.
I love you. I don't know how much time we're going to have, kids. So, is there anything else you need to say to them?
They said 15 minutes. That's how long
15 minutes. Okay, so you have a few minutes. Do you have anything you need to say?
There's not much to say right now.
Okay, I was asking them if they have anything they need to say to you.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was saying. I don't think they have anything to say right now. There's not much you can say.
I'm just angry.
Jay's angry. He said he doesn't have anything nice to say right now.
Yeah, I'm a failure. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're not a failure. Don't say that. I just want you to get the help that you need there so you can come back and you are healed. And you can get everything you need.
Yeah.
I love
you. Sorry to put y'all through it. I love you.
I love you. Anything else you need to say, Jay?
I don't want to go right now.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So, we, Julia loves you very, very much.
I love you.
I got to put our house back together.
Did they make a big mess?
Our bedroom was a big mess. Thankfully, the kids' rooms weren't a huge mess. The kitchen's a little bit of a mess.
Well, I have to tell you, the boys' towels are still in the dryer.
All right, that was heavy, and there's a lot going on there. Let's break it down. There are parts of this phone call where I do appreciate things Stephanie does, and parts where I'm kind of baffled by her word choices. Word choices like this. She says, how many additional charges are they going to be able to put on you? Now, her tone in that sentence is what kind of throws me. It almost seems like it's the law enforcement's fault or a nefarious intention by law enforcement. And I just have to say those potential charges come because of his actions. To be frank, he allegedly earned them. They weren't put on him. And maybe I'm allowing my mama protection to kind of cloud what I was hearing, but maybe not, because Zachary also says that this whole thing is happening because it was just a misunderstanding on the internet access. Meaning, if he had understood he wasn't supposed to access the internet, then he wouldn't be in jail. Again, that's a weird word phrasing or choice. You don't need to be a Mensa member to understand that your failure, because that's what Zachary calls it, your failure is fed through the internet. Don't get on the internet. You don't need to be told to not access the internet. All right, let's go on to other things in the phone call. Who is Father George? You heard Zachary reference him as the guy who told him to get rid of the cheap Walmart tablet, and then Zachary says he smashed it with a hammer. Apparently, Father George was more than a religious leader. It has been reported that Father George was also acting as some sort of proxy therapist for Zachary. And that doesn't seem like professional help to me. I hope that somewhere he was getting additional help above and beyond his spiritual help. And then in the phone call, how about the heartbreaking interaction between Zachary and his kids? The kids are crying. It seems his son is so angry, which is completely valid. Zachary uses some weird phrasing here too. Right before he talks to them, he asks if they are mad at him. Zachary, I think we can presume your children are angry. Anger is just one of the many steps in the grief process, and you have caused grief clear back to 2016 and now allegedly again. All right, I've seen a lot of people online make some presumptions about the final phrase before I stopped playing you the phone call. That final phrase is Zachary says, the boys' towels are in the dryer. Some of you think that's some sort of a code between Stephanie and Zachary. I'll leave that up to you guys to decide. I'm not sure exactly what that would reference, but it is a little weird that Zachary's house is destroyed from the raid and you're telling your wife there are towels in the dryer. I think she's going to be able to figure out the dry towels. All right, moving on. So all of this that I've talked about happened on Tuesday and Wednesday of last week. By Thursday, the school board and district had to respond to the flood of emails and phone calls demanding that Stephanie had to be removed from her professional position. I can sum up all that I found by one quote from a student parent named Sarah Jeffers. She said the following: "If you can't know what is going on inside your own home with your children and husband, and you can't catch onto something like this, why should Stephanie be trusted with our children?" So on Thursday night, the school board held a special meeting. Only 4 of 5 school board members could attend. And due to this, the school board punted. They said they had to postpone their decision about Stephanie. Here was their official statement. The board of directors of the Hot Springs School District is fully committed to student safety and is horrified by all forms of child abuse and child sexual exploitation. We understand that the community shares this deep commitment to children and to this district. With only 4 out of 5 board members present, the board does not feel equipped to make any decision concerning leadership and staffing. At this time, Dr. Nihas will continue to lead this district, and she has the support of the school board. The board plans to call a special board meeting on May 15th to reconsider this matter when more information is available and when all board members can be present. Okay, I'm sure you have plenty of thoughts about that. I do too, but let's move on. That very night, after that school board meeting and after that information was released by the school board, that same parent, Sarah Jeffers, and others committed to filing a lawsuit against the district. And I don't know if that threat had enough weight or if the school board just rethought things, but on Friday, they changed course. On Friday, the Hot Springs School Board placed Stephanie on administrative leave. They appointed an interim superintendent and then said Mike Hernandez would become the superintendent in the fall. The school board did not clarify if the leave is paid or unpaid. And that question of paid or unpaid was asked directly to the board by the crowd assembled, and the board did not answer the question. And apparently, the meeting became a little bit tense and loud after that. As of production time, Zachary's next court appearance date has yet to be published, but he is being held with no bond, like his wife referenced in the phone call. It has also been reported that he will possibly try for an insanity defense. I think if you took a hammer to your device, that might indicate you knew what you were doing was wrong, and you also knew you needed to stop it or cover up for it. Okay, that doesn't really play to insanity. I'll keep you updated as this moves forward. Let me know what you think in the comments.
I'm not sure that needs a ton of analysis on my part. It's pretty straightforward. This is the business. This is what happens in this business. You get these kinds of people. These kinds of people protect one another. And that's about it. I will say this about children, which is an interesting dynamic there with the audio, is that you could clearly hear his son was not a fan of his dad any longer. And yet the daughter was sort of making excuses and saying, I'm sorry this has happened and, I miss you and all this other stuff. Meanwhile, the son is like, go to hell, Dad, because your dad's a pedophile. So, yeah, it's awful, clearly. But again, the simple fact that these individuals are allowed to work in these environments is beyond disgusting. Here's what it says from a Yahoo News article, which was also sent my way. It says district officials did not clarify the terms of the leave following the meeting, further fueling community concerns. Some parents like Jeffers say removing Nihas is only the first step. Quote, while I'm happy at the moment that some kind of action has been taken, there are so many more layers of corruption, Jeffers added. Quote, I still feel defeated, and I'm not going to not feel defeated, he said, until she is gone. It goes on here. It says the board also voted to name Becky Roseberg, the current assistant superintendent over federal programs, as interim superintendent through June 30th, and then former superintendent Dr. Mike Hernandez is set to return and assume the role permanently starting on July 1st. So she's out of a job. The superintendent wife of the pedophile is not coming back, which is good. But ladies and gentlemen, this is just one case. This happens all over the United States on a constant basis. And if people believe that one elementary school teacher being a pedophile in the district where I live, if that entire allegation, of course, which I have no doubt and no reason to believe it's untrue, it certainly seems like it from numerous angles, there's no way that he's the only one. There's absolutely no way. And one of the things, again, that I failed to mention on Jesse's show the other day, Jesse and Outcast show, is that, and I said I was going to, and then I ended up losing my train of thought and moving on to something else. But one of the things that happens in an environment like this, as one might expect, where an employee gets cut loose for such a very specific reason, certainly of a sexual nature toward minors, it has to do with, of course, with a whole range of emotions of the individuals who work within such an environment. You have everything from anger to denial to laughter to making fun of the person. And then you, of course, get the exact extreme along that same line of denial, where you end up with individuals actually attempting to defend said individual. Because they're so in denial about the abuse that's actually taken place, they actually believe that defending the person in some way somehow absolves them of any wrongdoing that they've done, or as if to basically defend themselves as a fellow coworker, as if to say, well, I never even saw nor witnessed this kind of behavior among those individuals, therefore I'm not involved because I had no way of knowing. Well, like I did say on their show the other night, is that that's not even an excuse either. There is unfortunately a watering down and a pacification of human instinct that happens. But again, if individuals suspect wrongdoing, or they suspect that someone is being unprofessional, the major reason that they don't bring it forward to anybody is because they are afraid that they're going to, again, experience retribution in the working environment, and they'll end up losing their job as a result of bringing about a formal complaint against someone. Again, unfortunately, what a lot of educators don't know, and you've heard me say this before, is they're not taught the law. They just aren't taught the law in any professional development setting. They're not taught the law when they're in undergraduate school learning how to be in this business. And as a result of all of that, they don't know what their rights are. But certainly in the state of Ohio, if someone files a formal complaint against an educator, the state has to investigate. And if said individual, again, is making the formal complaint, that individual has to remain basically anonymous. They have to, their identity has to be concealed from anybody else who, again, is working within the environment. The investigator can know who you are, but the investigator can't tell anybody else who you are. So again, if someone in the working environment has more information about any fellow employee who is engaging in, again, at the very least, unprofessional actions, if not more specific crimes, then yes, they either have to go to the local police or they have to start filing, again, formal complaints at the state level to have the state actually investigate. But I understand the fear behind it also, because that's unfortunately what predators prey on. They prey on the inability of anybody that they are preying on to do the right thing and openly say how they're being victimized and who's doing the victimizing. And they rule through fear. But if the people running the place are ruling through fear, then again, the real people who run school buildings are the actual employees. It's not the school board, it's really not even the superintendent, and it's not even building administrators. Those people you can count on one hand. The people who really run the building are the teaching and non-teaching staff that exist within these buildings. They're really the people that run the show. These are the individuals, again, that are foolish enough to pay into a union that seeks to protect them, when clearly those unions do not do that. Hell, those unions don't even protect children. Point being, as I've even mentioned before and even written about in books, my recommendation is they not pay into unions, and that they just either pool their money all together to, again, keep their own savings account, find their own lawyer, and go after their fellow coworkers if they have to root out bad people. You should assume that when you walk into a school building or a school district that there are pedophiles who work there. You should make that assumption. And then again, if you suspect particular behavior, then you need to start gathering evidence. and you compile all of this evidence. Again, if it's over a course of a year or over a course of 6 months or what have you, well, if you suspect enough and enough wrongdoing, then you have a responsibility to bring this to the authorities' attention, and you have to do it. There isn't a single job that's worth it because, again, at the very end of the day, you'll lose your job for not reporting it. So you can lose your job for doing the right thing and reporting it, or you can wait for that district to throw you under the bus and you'll lose your job for not reporting it. So you decide. Because, again, if you lose your job for not reporting it, you're the guilty party. But if you lose your job for actually doing the right thing, well, then you have another lawsuit. Because it's certainly in the state of Ohio, retribution is against the law. They can't cut you loose because you did the right thing. They'll have so many lawsuits as a school district for cutting people loose for doing the right thing. It just, again, implies more guilt on their own part. It makes it look like they have even more to hide. Let me give you another story here. This was based out of Texas. This is from Red State Nation. It was titled, FBI Busts Social Justice Professor with Child Porn on TV. What they did next will make you furious. And basically what they did is they let this person remain employed and they didn't actually bust him until about 4 years later. It says, this is again San Antonio, Texas, a shocking FBI raid in July of 2021 uncovered Zaid, or whatever the hell his name is, Mashur Haddad, so not white, a University of Texas at San Antonio professor and self-proclaimed social justice advocate, watching child pornography on his TV, yet the agency waited until April 30th of 2025 to arrest him, sparking outrage among conservatives. The details reported by News4SanAntonio.com reveal that Haddad's, double life and the delay on his arrest has people on X fuming. Quote, FBI caught this creep in the act and let him roam free for 4 years. Disgraceful. Here's the news report on him and his arrest in 3, 2, 1.
Now to an update on a story that we brought you last night. A UTSA professor allegedly caught watching child pornography nearly 4 years ago was arrested for the alleged crime this week. News for San Antonio's Taylor Wardenby looks into why it took so long to make an arrest.
It's unbelievable. You don't walk in on a guy who's watching child pornography with young kids on a flat screen in his apartment and not make an arrest.
Criminal attorney Joe Holster is talking about Zaid Haddad. He's the UTSA professor arrested on Tuesday on federal child pornography charges. The charges date back to his arrest in July of 2021, when an affidavit states FBI agents caught Haddad watching child pornography inside his home. Holster is not his attorney, but is questioning why it took so long to arrest Haddad.
What's shocking is that law enforcement, a 7 or 8 year old being abused on his flat screen and left him in our community for 4 years.
Retired FBI agent Abel Pena says these types of cases take time.
The FBI will gather intelligence, usually through a variety of sources, either through other law enforcement agencies. From what I understand, some of these links were actual Zoom live streams, and so he accessed a lot of that stuff, and he was, from what I understand too, viewing it on his TV.
Pena says there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
They generally will collaborate with tech companies. That does take some time. They'll issue search warrants. They'll issue subpoenas for these companies, and that does take some time.
If convicted, Haddad faces up to 20 years in prison. I'm Taylor Wartenby reporting.
Again, the lawyer in the case, he openly said, again, he's not affiliated with the case, but he openly, again, said if you walk in on somebody and they're watching child pornography as a police officer, then yeah, they should be arrested, no doubt about it. And the other interesting part about this, of course, is that if you bounce this back to the local case with the local elementary school teacher, Jason Mers, in the town here, when an investigation fully takes place, they need to confiscate everything that this guy has. All his devices, his district devices, everything. And if the district itself actually believes that getting rid of any of the devices that they have regarding him, and somehow, again, getting rid of evidence is going to be a viable thing, it won't. All of this information exists on other people's computers. All of this information exists on the so-called cloud. It's out there, which means, again, any subpoena and any warrants can obtain this information. And again, if it even shows that the district was attempting to hide anything, they'll get caught. So again, these are not one-off situations, is my whole point. You know that, of course. I mean, you're smart people. You know that this is happening all over the place. But again, you have to think of the magnitude of the number of stories that people never hear about. Again, the local case where I live, it never made any national news of any kind, certainly not yet. The case in Arkansas, I didn't even hear about that until, again, a friend of mine sent it my way. But beyond that, this kind of stuff, again, is happening in most districts across the United States on a constant basis. They have endless investigations going on as school districts. They're being investigated themselves as school districts. There are endless lawsuits that these school districts are experiencing. And yet, unfortunately, people keep sending their children. So, as I've said before again, these districts will be left to a certain kind of person in the future. But it's not going to be left for the able-minded and the able-bodied. And it's certainly not going to be left for individuals who can read and write and think for themselves, because they can teach themselves. So there's absolutely no reason to even go anymore. In fact, as a result of a lot of this, and of course it's numerous other behaviors as well, and you've heard me bring this up numerous times before, but I want to use this again as a bit of a litmus test here. In the Westerville City Schools area, certainly from a finance standpoint, I've brought up their school board before. I've brought up numerous stories of them before in the past. They had a working meeting just the other day, a work session on April 28th, anyway, last week. And I watched a great deal of it. And again, it kind of reiterated a lot of the normal things that I've brought up here before, certainly regarding the state of schools in the state of Ohio and the budgetary measures that are being made by government to ultimately, again, take a great deal of money away from public education and allow parents to take it other places. This is a good thing. This is what parents want. We voted for this in Ohio. We voted for politicians, again, to represent us in this particular movement. And as you would expect, those advocating for public school absolutely hate it. But there was a particular slide in their slideshow when they were describing some of this money moving around, keeping in mind, again, that one of the roles of treasurers is to scare people to some extent. But again, I don't know who they're really scaring. They're not scaring the awake people. They're scaring those who are asleep in the interest of trying to get them to remain dependent on government schooling. So there is a clawback measure that apparently exists and is currently in this spending bill in the state of Ohio that basically says that if schools do not spend a certain amount of money, then they have to give it back to the state. Now, that's the Cliff Notes version of it, but I just wanted to read this particular slide because here's what it says. It says, clawback consequences for Westerville City Schools. It would require the district to go back to the voters every year with new operating levies as a result of, again, losing a copious amount of money. It said it would potentially reduce the state's reimbursement for rollback to our schools by over $10 million annually. So they would be losing, again, $10 million every single year, year after year. But their solution to this is to just tax property owners. And it says new operating levies would cost 12.5% more for all homeowners due to the elimination of the rollback. I can't for the life of me figure out why people would want to tax themselves over and over and over again for a school system that is not awake, sells a bad product, is brainwashing children without their knowledge or with their knowledge. They're not changing anything. They're not moving anything. They're not making any drastic decisions to change the curriculum or even allow the truth to enter the classroom. As you heard me say in the last episode, numerous episodes, the role of a teacher these days is certainly almost completely obsolete. Here's another one, again, having to do with Michigan finances. Jesse James just sent this my way. It was titled, Michigan Schools Seek $1.6 billion in New Public Debt May 6th. Residents of 31 school districts will vote on school bonds. This is a problem. Again, you can assume that almost every single state is going to consistently attempt to move toward two things that cannot coexist: school choice and maintaining public schools the way that they currently are and the way that they've always been. You cannot have both. And this is the war that's going on right now. And it's a good thing. But again, it boggles the mind as to why anybody would want to tax themselves to keep a school building alive and continuing to function, even when said family and property owners maybe have no affiliation with the school district whatsoever. Again, I've always wanted to check the mental status of people who love taxing themselves. It's just beyond stupid. It says voters in 31 school districts across Michigan will decide May 6th whether to take on new debt for various repairs, remodeling projects, upgrades, and other modifications to school property. If voters approve every request, they will need to pay off the $1.6 billion over time, with that money coming out of property taxes. That's exactly what's going on in Ohio today. That's exactly what the vote is about today as well. It's about fixing this, fixing that. It may or may not have to do with schools. I'm not 100% certain, but basically, the answer is no. The vote is always no. I'm not going to vote to tax myself because I'm not a moron. It says school districts that finance borrowing through bonds use the money for large-scale projects such as remodeling buildings or constructing new ones. Nearly all the districts seeking voter approval for new debt, 26 of the 31, said that they want to spend more on equipment for instructional technology. There you go. That'll fix your problem. I can't believe it. Well, we need more computers and that'll fix everything. If you need more computers, why isn't everyone just learning at home on a computer then? Why are they even wasting their time going into a brick and mortar building? And then, of course, get a load of this. It says security is another popular spending area, with 21 of the 31 districts mentioning it in their public notices. It says Central Lake Public Schools in Atrium County says it will construct secure entrances as part of its $15.4 million request. There you go. Turn them more into prisons than they already are. More metal detectors, please. It's just, what a waste. What an absolute waste. The thing to learn from all of this, I think, is think about the long term, okay? They have no choice but to consistently come back to the taxpayers to maintain these institutions. They have nowhere else to go. There isn't a bake sale with cookies and peanut butter sandwiches large enough to be able to again make ends meet, which means these buildings are going to have to start closing. End of story. They're going to have to close. And then, of course, as I've been over on the show in years past, what do they do with those buildings? Well, sometimes they sell them to actual mental institution hospitals. And the actual school building turns into a hospital or a mental institution or, something. But this is an interesting wavelength of thought that I've also had too, which actually originates from my dad, believe it or not. And he said this many, many years ago. He said, what if in the future, and this was around when shopping malls first started to close. So we're talking like early 2000. When shopping malls started to close and people weren't using them anymore, by and large, because of course, online purchasing and online shopping. He said, instead of just knocking them all down, and given the vastness of many of these malls, what if those malls turned into sort of a one-stop shop for everything elderly? So that you could have individuals, again, who were, older in age, basically. But it was basically like one location where they could receive everything that they needed. There would be a grocery store. There would be, eye exams and eye doctors, ear, nose, and throat doctors. There would be primary physicians. You could even have long-term care there if that needs to be. And again, if you think about the internal construction of a school building and the way that they typically look on the inside, certainly the outside would fit the mold. But if you think about the construction of the inside, there's nothing keeping a school district from selling a school building to a conglomerate like that would be interested in turning the building into something of that nature. Basically, again, a place for doctors and whomever of all different practices to basically have an office or multiple offices within that particular building, repurpose some of the interior if they had to, and then just use the inside for the elderly as, again, a one-stop shop. That way a person, an elderly person wouldn't have to drive from one office to the next, to the next, to the next. They could just basically park in the school parking lot. It wouldn't be called a school anymore, of course. But then they would just, again, enter and they would be able to hit all of their appointments in one spot and then go home. And then, of course, for those who were, sort of too far gone to even travel, or they actually had to live there, well, maybe you have an entire floor of that particular building that houses those individuals. Or, again, the school district just sells off the building to somebody else and sells off the property. That might happen also because, again, school districts are basically in the property business. And they sit on property and then they seek to sell it when they are in dire straits. But the sad part is they typically don't tell the public that they are sitting on property that they actually own that they could sell. They would rather just tax people first. So again, you think about that, it's kind of robbery in its own way. They have money. They're just telling everybody they don't. So basically, again, when it comes to taxes, I am not one to ever vote to support more taxes for anything, let alone schools. And again, long term, it's the only option for these schools is to either, again, close their buildings, sell the property that they own, sell the buildings, make more cuts, and slowly decline, which is inevitable. That's what's going on right now. I've been calling for this, of course, for a very long time. You could forecast this in 2020 with a level of ease that I think was pretty astounding, but it was rather obvious that this was the direction it was heading in. And then, of course, the reason as to why all of this is happening is very simple. It's child abuse. All the abuse that's been going on in these environments, generation after generation after generation, and of course the entire COVID lie, that ties directly into it also. And people are learning and people are waking up. And when they learn and they wake up to all of this child abuse that's just being government sanctioned, and then, perpetuated and allowed by the people who operate within these buildings and within these environments, if you have none of those people actually learning or coming to grips with what they've done, or again, saying that they have regrets and saying that they're sorry and saying that, they don't blame anybody else, but ultimately it's their own fault. If they don't do any of that, then they're not going to learn. They're just going to keep doing the thing that's driving the ship down to the bottom of the ocean. Fine by me. It's just unfortunate that endless people are victims of their stupidity and they're not learning from anything. Now, let me mention this too. Again, this kind of stupidity stretches right into higher education, of course, and it stretches right into the media manipulating everything. But the University of Washington, for example, has a bunch of Antifa people on its campus, and they're doing what they do. They dress in their black pajamas and they hold up trash cans and they set something on fire, and then they just stand there looking like lunatics. Unfortunately, even Fox News, in typical fashion, is openly saying that this is anti-Jewish and it's anti-Jewish protests, and, well, we saw a Palestinian flag, so they must be anti-Jewish and all they're doing is intimidating Jews. That's not what's going on. Antifa is Jewish. That's the origin of Antifa. It stems from Soviet Russia. That's where it came from. Back in the 20s and teens. I mean, again, this is common sense. So when someone says it's Antifa, and they're all dressed up like typical Antifa people that we've seen here in the United States, they're not anti-Jewish. That's not what that is. Now, they could be, again, turncoat or double-cross, whatever you want to call them, agitators, where they are actually Jewish individuals dressed up, again, like Antifa, waving a Palestinian flag just to, again, stir the pot and create more chaos and more confusion. I have no doubt that that's potentially happening too. But the simple fact, again, that the media just immediately strikes it up to, well, they're pro-Palestinian, anti-Jewish, and that's beyond obvious. It's actually not. Again, these people will put on pajamas of their enemy and dress up like their own enemy to make it look like their enemy is the one actually engaging in the activity when in fact it's them doing it. It's all designed, again, because it's a psychological operation. It's confusion. The CIA is behind a great deal of this, some of the funding that, of course, allows these individuals to do this, not to mention, who's to say that those students are actual students of the campus? Prove it. A bunch of people have apparently been arrested. Great, they should. They're setting things on fire, regardless of who they are. And they're disrupting the normal, actions of just about anything, which is disorderly conduct. So yeah, ticket them and arrest them and kick them out of there. But again, for the media to just make a broad statement that, well, it must be this way because we say so. Well, that's there's no thinking involved in that. That's just face value nonsense. But again, speaking of Fox News, here was another one. Linda McMahon blasts Harvard in scathing letter telling elite university it will no longer get federal grants. Good. It says McMahon says that Harvard has made a mockery of higher education in America. Of course, it's always been that way. After all, the president of Harvard is Jewish. His name is Alan Garber. This is the guy who took over for Claudine Gay, the black lady who, again, was apparently, plagiarizing some papers and, again, being advised by our lawyers that, look, people get to say whatever they want to say on campus and so on and so forth, but they were like, well, get rid of her and replace her with this guy. And they did, and now, again, it's like nothing's changed. Harvard's still doing what it's doing, and, again, their president is Jewish. So is he trying to take down his own institution under his own race? It's possible. I mean, these people like ruling over their ashes, so I don't, I don't know what else to say, but for someone to be like, well, they're only doing this to protect Jews. Again, he's Jewish. The president of the university is Jewish, so make that make sense. Again, it was last week, too, when the Senate Education Committee got together and they started, again, basically making legislation or amendments to potential legislation having to do with quote unquote antisemitism on college campuses. I just don't. I don't think that slowly eroding the First Amendment is a good thing. I think that should go without saying. It's a made-up phrase that is made up to protect a race of people from criticism. That's absurd because there's no other race that has such a made-up phrase that then becomes alleged law or policy. Freedom of speech is freedom of speech. Going around saying you want to kill somebody, I mean, everybody knows you can't do that, but there shouldn't be some extra penalty on top of what should just be the universal penalty for people, again, if they're threatening to kill somebody. They shouldn't say, well, they were threatening to kill somebody of a particular race, so we need to kick that up a notch. I mean, this stretches all the way back to things like, hate crimes. That's a hate crime. That's a perfect example of how you're taking a crime and you're dividing it up based on the race of the perpetrator or the race of the victim. And somehow that needs to be some extra element that adds an extra charge. It's completely ridiculous. Again, if a person is engaging in disorderly conduct or threatening violence, then, remove them, regardless of who they are. But again, if they did a side-by-side comparison or they were actually online figuring out who was actually making these threats, I bet it wouldn't be the very people that they claim that it is. It'd be far more diverse, I think, when it comes to individuals actually making any kind of threat. The vast majority of people who attend college just keep to themselves anyway. They really don't care about the ins and outs of any political movement or any demonstration of any kind. This is where the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but it's driven by the CIA, and it's driven by the Jewish lobby, and this has been proven time and time again. There's ample evidence that that's the case. So we'll keep an eye on it and see what goes on regarding all of that. Okay. Here is RFK in the White House describing the end of federal funding for gain-of-function research. Again, this transpired on Monday. Fantastic thing. It says, breaking, POTUS just signed an executive order protecting Americans from dangerous gain-of-function research. And then the order is laid out here, and I will give this to RFK, and you can give him a listen describing this. Again, just to review very quickly, gain-of-function means you're playing with poisons in a lab to see how they interact with controls, in order to, again, see whether or not the control becomes infected as a result of being close to the poison. So you take a poison, you stick it in an animal in a laboratory, and then you take a uninjected animal and you have them congregate around the injected one. And they, of course, time how quickly the other animal that has not been injected gets sick. And then, of course, you then transfer that over to humans. And you inject a human. And then the human gets around other humans, and via electromagnetism, you can determine whether or not other people around that injected person are going to get sick or not. It's not coughing and sneezing that transmits illness, rather. It's electromagnetism. It's being around people. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Gain of function is an historic day, the end of gain of function research funding by the federal government and also controls by private corporations on gain of function studies. This was the kind of study that was engaged in by the United States military and intelligence agencies beginning in 1947. By 1969, the CIA said that they had reached nuclear equivalency, that they could kill the entire U.S. population for 29 cents a person. That year, President Nixon went to Fort Detrick and announced a unilateral end to this kind of research, what they call dual-use research that was for vaccination and also for military purposes. He then persuaded over 180 countries to sign the Bioweapons Charter in 1973. That basically ended gain-of-function research around the globe until 2002. Or 2001, after the anthrax attacks, we passed the Patriot Act, and the Patriot Act had a provision, a little-known provision in it, that said that although the Bioweapons Charter is still in effect, and the Geneva Convention is still in effect, U.S. federal officials who violate it cannot be prosecuted. And that relaunched a bioweapons arms race, and that was driven by gain-of-function research. In 2014, 3 of those bugs escaped from U.S. labs, and President Obama declared a moratorium on future use, and instead a lot of that research was moved offshore to the Wuhan lab. And it launched bioweapons arms race all around the country, all around the world, so that China's engaged in it, developing all kinds of weapons using AI and CRISPR technologies that are really devastating. Russia is deeply engaged in it, Iran and many other countries. It's a kind of weapon that always has blowback. There's always bad news. And the justification for this kind of weaponry was, and these kind of research was always that we have to do this to develop vaccines to counter a future pandemic. In all of the history of gain-of-function research, we can't point to a single good thing that's come from it. And today, I commend President Trump for his courage and his vision in ending U.S. bioweapons research.
Might have been a little hard to hear. Either way, I'll mess with the audio and maybe try to clean it up if I can. Point being, he unfortunately left off Ukraine and Israel as being other countries that engage in bioweapons research along with the United States. He did say our own government, of course, toward the beginning, and he would be right. That development happened also in the United States, and it's happened all over the world. And again, it's being done for population control. That's its point. That's the entire point. Unfortunately, of course, you sell this to a gullible public with any kind of a fairy tale that they decide to concoct, and they try to, again, tell the American public that they need this method of research because this method of research makes vaccines work better. Well, that depends on your definition of work better. If work better is kill people quicker and make them sicker, longer, faster, then the answer is yes, they work better. If working better really means, well, it's supposed to prevent something that exists or that is floating around in the air, well, the answer to that is no. It doesn't do that either because none of that exists either. So again, it's a lie on top of a lie, but you need the fairy tale to sell the other lies, and then a gullible, non-thinking populace will just blindly believe it. But this is a good move, and it's a good step in the right direction. It's not going to stop bad people from doing bad things with their own money. And then again, handing over a product that's already been developed, that's already bad, to vaccine manufacturers, and then those vaccine manufacturers start pumping out a particular poison that they want to use to kill people. If they want to do that, then they can still do that. But cutting off the money is one of the ways that you slow this. There is no doubt about that. But again, he should have said Israel and Ukraine because, well, they've been involved in this also, just like our government has too. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for this. Again, I'll play with the audio and see if I can improve it, and we'll see if maybe the audio doesn't get better for the next one. With that said, thank you again for listening. I appreciate it, and I will link the Dangerous Info podcast link in the description below if you're interested in checking that out. Until then, I'll catch you on Friday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.